The day General Alexander returned victorious from battle, he brought back no enemy trophies, only a blind woman. At the victory banquet before the assembled court officials, he poured a cup of hot wine at my feet. Sophia, he declared, his voice carrying across the grand hall. Lillian wept herself blind, saving my life. The court astrologer says her destiny is beyond precious. She is my guardian angel. From this day forward, she shall be my wife, and you shall be my concubine. Remove your seal of authority and your ceremonial robes as the lady of this house. Give them to dear Lillian. You were born of merchant blood, you never truly deserved me anyway. The hall erupted in whispers, everyone waiting to watch this supposedly hot, tempered merchant's daughter throw a tantrum and create a scene. Instead, I smiled, calmly removing the priceless phoenix crown from my head and placing it upon the pretenders. Very well, Alexander, I said with perfect composure. However, there is something you seem to have forgotten. The beams of this mansion, the floor tiles, even the golden thread in your undergarments, all were purchased with Whitmore family money. Since I am now to be a concubine, let us follow the rules of concubinage. A concubine's private property remains her own. Servants, tear this house down. Everything except the skin on the general's back belongs to me. That was the first time Alexander realized that without me, he couldn't even afford decent clothing. The atmosphere in the banquet hall froze to an Arctic chill. Alexander clearly hadn't expected this reaction from me. In his limited imagination, I should have fallen to my knees weeping, clutching his legs and begging him not to favor his concubine over his wife. Or perhaps I should have acted like a common shrew, scratching and clawing at Lillian's face. After all, I, Sophia Whitmore, had loved him for 7 years and spent fortunes on him for 7 years, transforming him from a mere captain of the 5th rank into the mighty northern general he had become. Unfortunately for him, he didn't understand the merchant mind. Merchants believe in cutting losses. When an investment has clearly failed and begins consuming your principal, the wisest course isn't to invest more. It is to liquidate immediately and salvage whatever you can. Lillian nestled against his chest, her supposedly blinded eyes covered with white silk, yet somehow she turned her face in my exact direction, a mocking smile playing at her lips. "Sister, what are you doing?" she asked, her voice sickeningly sweet like honey mixed with aged phlegm. "The general only thinks of the greater good. The astrologer said I have an auspicious destiny for my husband. Only by taking the position of principal wife can I ensure the general's continued prosperity. If you truly love the general, shouldn't you step aside for his future?" Alexander's face softened with apparent emotion as he turned to glare at me. "Look how understanding dear Lillian is, and look at you, nothing but vulgar money. Grubbing. You are being completely unreasonable. If I were you, I'd kneel and thank Lillian for her magnanimity, then retire quietly to the side quarters." I brushed crumbs from my hands and rose gracefully. "General Alexander speaks truly. I am a merchant's daughter, naturally inclined to count every copper." I beckoned to the Whitmore family guards who had been waiting outside. "Since I am now a concubine, according to imperial law, a concubine's private property remains her own. Only the principal wife need contribute her dowry to household expenses. I am a law-abiding citizen, and since I've been demoted, naturally the subsidies that belong to principal wife Sophia must be reclaimed." Steward Williams. Begin. The elderly Steward Williams, accompanied by 30 burly men, charged in like wolves. "Clear this hall first. Those rosewood chairs and tables, remove them. That Persian tribute carpet, roll it up, and that painting of cranes and pines on the wall. That was part of my dowry from my grandfather, take it down." Alexander was stunned. The assembled guests were equally bewildered. They watched in amazement as the burly men efficiently began dismantling the house. Several men approached Alexander's chair and, without regard for his sitting there, simply pulled the 1,000 gold chair from beneath him. Hey, what are you doing? Have you lost your minds? Alexander stumbled, nearly falling face first, barely managing to steady himself against a pillar, his face flushed with rage. Lillian shrieked as the soft couch she occupied, also part of my dowry, was lifted by two men who simply tipped her off like dumping garbage onto the floor. Sophia, have you gone mad? Alexander helped Lillian up, pointing accusingly at me. This is an imperial. Granted mansion, how dare you cause trouble here? I leaned casually against the doorframe, enjoying the spectacle. The imperial grant included only the land and an empty shell general. Have you forgotten? When you complained the mansion was too shabby, I spent 800,000 silver taels renovating it. Oh, and don't forget the flooring. I pointed at our feet. I also laid these golden bricks. Since I am no longer mistress of the house, I'll need to take them to line my pig pens. The workers immediately produced shovels and crowbars, beginning to pry up the floor tiles with enthusiastic clanging. Soon, what had been an elegant victory banquet became a dusty, chaotic construction site. Guests covered their mouths and noses, coughing as they fled, looking at me as if I were completely mad. But I knew what they were truly thinking. This Whitmore woman is ruthless. Alexander trembled with rage, drawing his sword. Sophia, stop this immediately, or don't blame me for being merciless. I didn't even lift an eyelid. Mercilessness, General Alexander, that jade pendant at your waist also cost me 5,000 taels. Please remove it and return it, or I'll charge you with theft. Alexander froze mid-draw. He looked down at the finest white jade pendant that symbolized his rank, his face cycling through various shades of embarrassment. Furthermore, I surveyed him from head to toe. Your ceremonial robes are made from Whitmore family silk. Would you care to remove those as well? Alexander was completely paralyzed. Only then did he realize that in this house, except for his own flesh and blood, every single item bore the Whitmore name. Fine, excellent. Alexander ground his teeth, ripping off the jade pendant and smashing it to the ground. Sophia, you'll regret this. Without me, you are nothing but an unwanted, discarded woman. Tomorrow I'll impeach you for gross disrespect. The pendant shattered across the floor. I clicked my tongue regretfully. Steward, add that to the bill. General Alexander destroyed private property, one white jade pendant. Market value 5,000 taels. Given the force of that throw, charge him 10,000. Yes, miss, old Williams replied thunderously. I turned and walked away, leaving behind the chaos and Alexander's furious shouting. A wife should be virtuous and gentle, but a concubine naturally should be seductive and mercenary, recognizing only money, not people. General Alexander, since I also laid this flooring, would you prefer to continue this conversation standing or floating? Dismantling the house was only the first step. The real entertainment was yet to come. Alexander was the classic type who ate from the hand that fed him while biting it. He truly believed his smooth path to success came from some supposed chosen destiny. Ridiculous. I was born a human treasure trove with an extremely yang fate that perfectly suppressed his cursed star of calamity. For 7 years, I had employed countless feng shui masters to weave intricate fortune arrays around him, using the Whitmore family's vast wealth to shield him from disasters, preserving his polished exterior. Now he wanted to discard me, his human talisman, to trust some charlatan fortune teller. Very well then, I would withdraw my investment. The next morning, I moved into a tea house across from the general's mansion, ordered fine tea, and settled in to watch the show. I'd heard Alexander planned to petition the emperor today, lodging formal complaints against me. Just after the hour of the rabbit, the mansion gates opened. Alexander emerged in somewhat wrinkled official robes, mounted on his chestnut horse. Charging out with great momentum, Haya, he whipped the horse's flank. This was a prize stallion I had carefully selected, usually fed the finest grain and spring water. Last night I had specifically ordered his feed cut and replaced with moldy hay while adding some medicinal herbs to his water. The horse reared in pain, and barely 3 steps from the gate, its belly rumbled ominously. Its rear legs buckled, and it began an explosive display. The spectacle was truly magnificent. Alexander had been posing majestically when his mount stumbled, launching him in a perfect arc through the air to land precisely in the roadside sewage ditch. His anguished cry startled the sparrows from the trees. Early rising vendors and passers-by stared in shock, then burst into laughter. Alexander crawled from the filthy ditch, covered in mud with a rotten cabbage leaf adorning his head. Worst of all, his already ill-fitting official robes, stressed by the violent movement and aged fabric, gave way with a distinct tearing sound. His trousers split completely, revealing his bright red undergarments. Ha 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 ha, the general certainly knows how to make an entrance. I nearly choked on my melon seeds with laughter. Alexander, mortified beyond words, tried to cover himself and flee back inside when Lillian came rushing out upon hearing the commotion. General, don't panic. Lillian carried a bowl of murky black liquid, stumbling forward. This is blessed water from the astrologer. Your misfortune is breaking away. Quickly drink this, and you'll surely turn calamity into blessing. In his desperation, Alexander actually accepted the bowl and tilted his head back to drink. Drinking too quickly, the liquid caught in his throat. Cough, cough, he coughed violently, his face turning purple. Suddenly, a white object shot from his mouth, striking a colleague who had approached to help. It was a tooth, a front tooth. Years ago, he'd been injured in battle, and I had paid a renowned physician to craft a false tooth, held in place with expensive medicinal adhesive that required regular maintenance. With no one to maintain it recently, the adhesive had failed. The violent coughing launched it like a projectile. The colleague wiped the saliva and dental matter from his face, his expression disgusted as he stepped back 3 paces. General Alexander, you certainly have strong teeth. Alexander covered his now whistling mouth, looking at his fallen tooth, then at his split trousers, his whole body trembling. I applauded from above. The general's trousers split with such crisp precision, quite festive indeed. Don't blame the water for catching on teeth. Your dental work simply can't handle such refined sustenance anymore. Naturally, Alexander couldn't petition the emperor that day. He spent the entire afternoon bathing, reportedly scrubbing off a layer of skin to remove the sewage stench. By evening, famished, he pounded the table in his main hall demanding dinner. After shouting for ages, only the wind answered. Where is everyone? I demand food. Alexander, dizzy with hunger, roared at the empty courtyard. Steward Williams ambled over slowly, carrying a thick ledger. General. Shouting won't help. The mistress says concubines have no obligation to feed the entire household. The kitchen is now the mistress's private property. If you want to eat, you must pay. Alexander's eyes bulged. What? I have to pay to eat in my own home. Precisely. I entered with my servant Amber, walking with complete confidence. General Alexander, this rice comes from Whitmore plantations, the vegetables from Whitmore shops, even the cooking fuel from Whitmore forests. What right do you have to eat for free? Alexander pointed a shaking finger at me. Sophia, this is too much. I am your husband. Former husband, or rather master, I corrected. Your current principal wife is Miss Lillian. Logically, you should ask her for meals. Alexander turned to Lillian. She paled, but tried to maintain face. General, don't worry. Lillian has silver. She fumbled in her clothing and produced a small purse, emptying out a few broken pieces of silver, perhaps 5 or 6 taels total. I snorted derisively. How precious. That might buy 2 bowls of plain rice. However, given our 7 years of marriage, I'll offer the general a discount. I took the ledger from Williams and slammed it on the ground before Alexander. Since we're settling accounts, let's be thorough. These 7 years, everything you've eaten, worn, and used, plus what your relatives have extorted and the military funds you've embezzled. Altogether, 3 million taels. I won't charge interest but emotional damages, lost youth, and what your dear Lillian has consumed in this house over the years. Round it to 4 million taels total. Alexander stared at the brick-thick ledger, his eyes nearly popping out. 4 million taels. Why don't you just rob people? Robbery isn't nearly as profitable. I smiled sweetly. Doesn't Miss Lillian have treasure maps? Isn't her destiny beyond precious? This amount should be trivial for her. Lillian panicked. She had no treasure maps. Her so-called treasure map was just mystical scribbling used to deceive Alexander. General, my treasure map only works at specific celestial times. Lillian stammered for excuses. Oh, specific times? I beckoned, and several pawnshop clerks entered. Since there is no money, let's settle with goods. Although I've removed most items from the study, the remaining paintings and antiques, though ancestral Blackwood family junk, have some value. Appraise everything for debt settlement. Alexander exploded. Those are ancestral heirlooms. You dare touch them? I have the property deed. I produced a delicate paper from my sleeve. When you mortgaged this mansion to my father for military funds, you signed this personally. Now this house bears the Whitmore name. Alexander fell silent, realizing the guards in the courtyard all wore Whitmore uniforms and watched him with predatory eyes. His original soldiers had been dismissed when I stopped paying their wages. The mansion's security was now entirely under Whitmore control. Mixing business with pleasure hurts profits. Let's stick to business. Though I feel no pleasure where you are concerned. This is called fee for service. Since the general has no money, starve. It builds character. That night, Alexander and Lillian slept on empty stomachs and cold wind, desperate. Alexander pinned all hopes on Lillian's supposed husband-benefiting powers. Lillian, trapped in her own lie, could only continue the charade. But I, Sophia Whitmore, never fight unprepared battles. The day she entered my house, I had my intelligence network investigate everything about her. Down to her undergarments, what battlefield orphan, what heaven-sent blessing. This woman's real name was Daisy, a notorious female swindler from the neighboring county, specializing in collaborating with charlatan mystics to con wealthy, superstitious merchants. She had targeted Alexander, seeing his desperate ambition and gullible superstition as the perfect mark for an elaborate scheme. I didn't rush to expose her, as they say, catch thieves with stolen goods, catch adulterers in the act. I wanted Alexander to see with his own eyes what kind of creature he had been cherishing. 3 days later, as a concubine, I hosted a flower viewing party at the mansion, ostensibly for admiring blossoms, actually for giving the capital's social circle a good laugh. The invitations drew more guests than expected. Everyone wanted to see the blind white lotus who had pushed the principal wife into concubinage. At the banquet, I deliberately gave Lillian the seat of honor. Though nervous, she maintained her general's wife facade. Her outfit was intentionally gaudy, clashing bright red and green that made her look like a demented parrot. I hear our mistress has remarkable eyes, though blind, she can identify treasures. A minister's wife fanned herself with apparent innocence. This was my planted accomplice. Lillian immediately straightened proudly, naturally. Though my mortal eyes cannot see, I can sense celestial energy. How convenient, I clapped. I recently acquired a child-blessing Guanyin statue. Would the mistress examine it for auspicious energy? Amber brought a covered tray. Lillian made a show of waving her hands above the red cloth, suddenly trembling with apparent excitement. Oh my, such concentrated blessing energy. This must be carved from thousand-year jade. If enshrined in one's chamber, it will surely bring many sons. The room fell silent. Everyone stared at her strangely. I suppressed laughter and whipped off the cloth. On the tray sat not a Guanyin statue, but a chamber pot crudely made bronze with wealth flows in, carved on its side. Then the entire room erupted. The noble ladies laughed until tears came. Oh dear, this blessing energy. Could it be the scent of child's urine? 1,000-year jade, that is clearly bronze. Those divine eyes are truly blessed. Lillian's face turned purple with mortification. Though blind, she could hear the mockery and trembled with rage. Someone deliberately framed me. She still tried to argue when a visiting lady from another province suddenly stood, pointing at Lillian in recognition. Wait, why does she look familiar? Isn't this the concubine Golden Flower who swindled 5,000 taels from Magistrate Zhang in Yangzhou 2 years ago? Lillian froze, instinctively covering her face. I grabbed a bronze mirror, angling it to reflect sunlight onto her face. The bright glare was blinding. The supposedly blind Lillian, unable to tolerate the light, instinctively raised her hand to shield her eyes, which darted about rapidly. My Miss Lillian's blindness is quite selective, eyes open for money, closed for people. I delivered the killing blow. The room gasped. This was clearly not a blind woman, but a fraud. When Alexander arrived, he found his divine maiden surrounded by pointing noble ladies like a cornered rat. This is your auspicious blessing. I pointed at the chamber pot. General Alexander, would you like to inhale some of this pot's blessed vapors while they're still warm? The flower viewing party became the capital's greatest scandal. Alexander's reputation was ground into the dirt, yet he still refused to believe Lillian was a fraud. This was gambler's psychology. He had invested too much to admit being fooled. Acknowledging the deception would mean accepting himself as a complete fool. So he chose self-deception. But heaven, or rather my withdrawn investment, wasn't finished with him. Due to repeated breaches of court etiquette and this public humiliation, impeachment memorials flew like snowflakes to the emperor's desk. His Majesty, already viewing Alexander with suspicion for his growing power, seized this opportunity. An imperial decree arrived. Northern General Alexander, failing to govern his household and lacking moral character, is demoted 3 ranks to city gate captain, effective immediately. From a prestigious first-rank official to a security guard captain at the city gates, the fall was more dramatic than any carnival ride. Alexander, receiving the decree, was utterly stunned. He tried appealing to former colleagues, but discovered that without my silver for bribes, his supposed blood brothers wouldn't even let him through their gates. Some even set dogs on him. The next day, Alexander stood in his ill-fitting low-rank uniform at the city gates under the scorching sun. I had changed to my most luxurious carriage, and with Amber, swaggered out for a countryside excursion. At the gates, my carriage stopped. I lifted the curtain to see Alexander sweating in the blazing sun. He was darker, thinner, his false tooth still unrepaired, causing him to whistle when speaking. Well, if it isn't General Alexander, I feigned surprise, covering my mouth. Haven't seen you in days. Why have you dismounted and taken up guard duty? Experiencing common life? Alexander saw me and his eyes blazed with fury. Sophia, are you here to mock me? Be confident, drop the question mark. I pulled a copper coin from my sleeve, one I'd found on the road. Ding. The coin arsed through the air, landing precisely in a broken bowl at his feet, left there by a beggar. Keep that coin safe, it might be your only income today. Alexander was so enraged he tried to stomp the coin into the dirt, but used too much force, slipped, and tumbled backward. Surrounding citizens and merchants covered their mouths, snickering. Just then, Lillian came running over in tears. She had stopped pretending to be blind. What was the point? General, you must seek justice for me. It is that jinx Sophia's fault, ever since she became a concubine. Our family has had nothing but misfortune. General, divorce her quickly and our luck will turn. Alexander looked at me, his expression wavering. He was actually tempted, not to divorce me, but to restore me to avoid complete destitution. But I had already sealed all of Lillian's escape routes. She couldn't flee. She was bound to Alexander, doomed to taste poverty's bitter dregs with him. Divorce me? I laughed coldly. Captain Alexander, the house you live in is mine. The food you eat is on my credit. What right do you have to divorce me? To salvage the situation and avoid Alexander's wrath, Lillian decided on a desperate gamble. She contacted her old fraud ring's leader, a charlatan calling himself the Grand Astrologer, planning a major exorcism at the general's mansion. Nominally for exorcism, actually to blame all misfortunes on me, claiming I was possessed by demons, causing the family's ruin. That evening, the mansion blazed with light. The grand astrologer, hair disheveled, waved a peach, wood sword, and danced frantically in the courtyard. Demon, nowhere to hide. He sprayed wine on the sword, and flames instantly burst from its tip. Alexander watched, mesmerized, hope rekindling in his eyes. Look, it is working. It is truly working. Lillian shouted excitedly. The grand astrologer threw yellow paper into water, which immediately turned blood red. This is the evil aura from the Sophia woman. Remove her, and the general will surely regain his position. I sat comfortably in my chair, sipping hot tea. Beside me, an elderly man in plain clothes, a master craftsman from the capital's largest fireworks workshop, moonlighting as a chemistry teacher. About time, wouldn't you say? I set down my cup, yawning. This performance is too poor. It is putting me to sleep. I nodded to the craftsman, who stepped forward with an identical peach-wood sword, sprinkling powder on it. Whoosh! Flames leaped higher and brighter than the grand astrologer's. This is called pine resin powder, ignites on contact with fire, the craftsman explained calmly. He then threw yellow paper into alkaline water. The water turned red instantly. Turmeric paper turns red in alkali. What evil aura, that is for fooling simpletons. And this, I pointed below the altar. Pry up that floor tile. Workers rushed forward, removing tiles to reveal hidden mechanisms and fake snake skin props. What divine sight? I'd say you need your eyes checked. I waved my hand. Constable Liu from the Justice Ministry, your entrance. Pre-positioned ministry officers burst out, restraining the fleeing grand astrologer. Zhang the pockmarked. You are wanted for multiple fraud cases. Come with us. The grand astrologer was pressed to the ground, terrified, immediately betraying Lillian. Don't arrest me. It was her that Daisy ordered me. She said there was a fool general here, easy to deceive, and wanted me to perform for money. Alexander was thunderstruck. He turned stiffly to his cherished, divine maiden. Daisy, fool general. Lillian collapsed face ashen, feigning unconsciousness. Oh no, I am dying. Stop pretending. I signaled Amber, who doused her with ice-cold well water. Splash heart refreshingly cool. Lillian shrieked, awake, makeup running, resembling a drowned chicken. Emptying the water from your brain could extinguish this altar. I looked at Alexander's pallid face with infinite irony. With the fraud exposed, Alexander completely collapsed. He had lost his position, his wealth, and now his last spiritual pillar, that false destiny, lay shattered. He began drinking heavily, staying perpetually intoxicated, and I decided to deliver the final, most humiliating blow. I posted a notice at the capital's largest auction house. The Blackwood family is deeply in debt and unable to repay. Now auctioning the position of Alexander's principal wife. Starting bid 1 copper coin, highest bidder wins, proceeds to settle Alexander's debts. Asterisk asterisk this notice, set the capital ablaze. Auctioning a husband, a former Northern general, no less. This was unprecedented. On auction day, the house was packed. Alexander was bound and dragged onto the platform, gagged, his red eyes fixed on me in the second floor box. If looks could kill, I would have been shredded by now. But I didn't care. I held melon seeds, smiling as I watched the spectacle below. The auctioneer banged his gong. This is the former Northern general. Though fallen now, he has still got backbone, perfect for household protection. Starting bid 1 copper coin. The crowd burst into laughter. 5 coppers. I'll buy him to guard my butcher shop, called a rough-faced butcher. 10 coppers. I'll buy him to wash my daughter's feet, shouted an upstart matron. 50 coppers. I want to taste what a general's wife feels like. Even a brothel madam joined the bidding. Alexander trembled with rage on the platform. This was the ultimate humiliation, worse than death. Lillian hid in the crowd, head down, afraid to speak. Penniless and infamous, she could only stick with Alexander for survival. To maintain her deeply devoted facade and avoid being beaten to death by angry citizens, she forced herself to bid. I bid 1 tael of silver. She produced her last savings. The hall quieted, then exploded with even fiercer laughter. Look, isn't that the fraud, Daisy? 1 tael for a general. This general's awfully cheap. Seeing the moment was right, I waved my hand. The auctioneer immediately shouted, 1 tael once, 1 tael twice, any higher bids? If not, this general goes unsold. The madam protested. I bid 2 taels. Lillian panicked, she was broke. The farce ended with the madam's 2 tael bid winning. But naturally, I wouldn't actually sell Alexander to a brothel that violated imperial law. I wanted only this process, showing Alexander that in the marketplace he was worth less than a pig. Alexander, see, your deep love couldn't even buy a pig at market. I had him untied and thrown off the platform like a dead dog. This time I am not selling. Keep him for slow debt repayment. After the auction humiliation, Alexander completely lost his mind. He vented all fury on Lillian. If not for this woman, how could he have fallen so low? If she hadn't deceived him about destiny, how could he have offended me, his financier? Lillian had also had enough. Following Alexander meant not just starvation, but daily beatings and citywide scorn. They huddled in the mansion's remaining, rain-leaking side quarters, too poor for repairs, erupting in final mutual destruction. That day brought torrential rain. The two fought over a moldy, steamed bun. You wicked woman, Jinx. You ruined me. Alexander slapped Lillian, sending her wig flying. Lillian, stressed and constantly wearing wigs, had gone completely bald. The slap revealed her bare scalp, which with her pallid face made her look like a ghost. Ah, my hair, Lillian shrieked, abandoning all pretense of gentleness, pouncing to claw Alexander's face. You worthless waste. If you were capable, would I suffer with you? General, you are more like a eunuch. They rolled in the mud, biting and scratching, revealing each other's secrets. When you worked as a courtesan in Yangzhou, you serviced clients until your legs gave out. What purity act? You embezzled military funds and spied on widows bathing. Think I didn't know? Their obscenities, amplified by rain, carried outside. I sat in my carriage, listening to the chaos, having melon seeds and 2 dulled knives sent in. Fight to the death. Winner gets a steamed bun. Seeing the knives, both their eyes gleamed. Though unsharpened, they were iron weapons. The fight escalated to armed combat. This was their lifetime partnership. More like lifetime enemies. Finally, both collapsed exhausted in the mud like dying fish. The farce was ending. I was tired of their game. The next day, rain stopped. I arrived at the side quarters with the property deed and magistrate officers. Alexander, Lillian, come out. Both emerged. Battered and supporting each other, looking at me with pure terror. Safia. What now? Eviction. I waved the deed. This mansion now belongs to me. You have half an hour to leave. Alexander broke down. This is my home. I've lived here 10 years. That was before. I spoke coldly. When you mortgaged this house to my father, why didn't you think of it as home? Now the term has expired. You didn't repay. The house is mine. Officers, clear them out. Magistrate officers rushed in, throwing them and their belongings onto the street like garbage. Go far away. Don't dirty my doorstep. Bad for feng shui. Alexander lay on the wet street, staring at the closed gates that once symbolized his glory, now forever barred to him. Rain began again. They huddled under stone lions, shivering. Previously, you made me guard an empty room alone. Now I make you use sky as roof and earth as bed. Romantic enough. Alexander tried neighboring doors for help, but neighbors hearing his name doused him with wash water. Bad luck, get lost. Lillian attempted seducing a passing fat merchant, but was kicked away by his fierce wife. What bald madwoman dares seduce my husband? 3 years later, Whitmore businesses spanned the empire. I had become an imperial merchant, the undisputed richest person in the realm. His Majesty, recognizing my achievements, awarded me the Golden Plaque Empire's greatest merchant. Today, after inspecting new shops, I returned home in my spacious, luxurious carriage. Along the streets, citizens lined up cheering, flowers and applause washing over me like tide. Suddenly, the carriage stopped. "What is wrong?" I asked. "Mistress, an old beggar blocks our path," a guard reported. "Appears blind and lame." I lifted a corner of the curtain. In the muddy road crouched a ragged, stinking old beggar. He truly was blind now. Attacked by vicious dogs while begging. His leg was also broken. Hearing my voice, he suddenly raised his head excitedly. Though sightless, he accurately called toward me, "Sophia, is that you? I am Alexander, your husband. I know you still care for me. Please take me home. I was wrong, truly wrong." He kowtowed frantically, his forehead striking stone, blood flowing. Surrounding citizens murmured. Guards drew swords to drive him away, but I raised my hand, stopping them. Hearing this, Alexander's face lit with mad joy. That filthy visage mixing blood and mud bath grotesque and pitiful. I watched him quietly, like observing a roadside stone or wild grass. My heart held no hatred, no emotion whatsoever. "This person looks quite pitiful." I spoke indifferently, casually grabbing a leftover steamed bun from a nearby plate and tossing it down. The bun rolled through mud, stopping beside Alexander's hand. "Give him a bun to eat." I lowered the curtain. "Continue, don't delay my debt collection." Alexander's smile froze. He numbly felt for the mud-covered bun, his only food in days. Carriage wheels rolled forward, leaving his cries far behind. I thought this was the ultimate revenge. Who was Alexander? I couldn't remember. The Whitmore ledger never recorded bad debts. In this world, only money and power held in your own hands never betray you.